My name is Holden Whitmore. I'm 42 years old, and I've been working in technology since I was 23. I was an IT manager at a solid company in Nashville, Tennessee. I built my career on ethics, vision, and loyalty. For 11 years, I lived in the same house with my wife, Avery. I bought that house with the bonus from my first major project back in 2013. I've always been calm, methodical, the kind of man who thinks 3 times before reacting. That's who I was. That's who I still am. In March 2024, after a massive layoff, I was let go without ceremony. No warning, no explanation, just a security escort to the parking lot and a cardboard box with my desk belongings. A few weeks later, I had to hand over the keys to our house to the bank. Foreclosure. The word felt like a punch every time I said it out loud. On that same day, standing in the empty living room where we'd celebrated birthdays, anniversaries, and quiet Sunday mornings, Avery looked me in the eyes and said with surgical coldness, "Men like you don't recover." Then she walked out with her bags already packed. There was no discussion, no tears, just silence, just the echo of her heels on the hardwood floor. I'd refinished myself. If you enjoy stories of cold-blooded revenge and gripping plot twists like this video, and subscribe to the channel now. There are brand new, unreleased stories here every day, each one more intense than the last. Avery said she was tired of emotionally supporting someone stagnant. That's the word she used. Stagnant. Like I was a pond, not a person. But I found out soon after that she was already involved with Mark Collier, a former colleague of mine who climbed quickly after my departure. Her excuse was never about exhaustion. It was convenience, pure emotional calculation. Mark had been promoted based on projects I'd structured, my architecture, my code, my late nights. And now he was reaping the rewards while I was sleeping on my brother's couch in a suburb I couldn't afford to live in anymore. I want to be clear about something. Months before everything collapsed, I noticed Avery was more distant. She'd switch her phone screen off when I walked into the room. She stayed up later, always on her laptop, always with an excuse. Something in me already knew, but I ignored it. I believed it was just the stress of our routine, the financial pressure, the normal wear of a long marriage. I was wrong. I wasn't paranoid. I was just hopeful. Even before the collapse, I'd always documented everything. Contracts, communications, investments. It's a habit from working in IT. You keep logs. You track changes. You maintain version control. When the crisis started, I protected my accounts, made copies of important files, and organized my life as if I was about to start from zero. Because I was. I backed up every email, every project file, every record of contribution I'd made to that company. I didn't know why at the time. I just knew I needed proof that I existed, that I mattered, that I'd built something real. It was a former colleague, Dave Richardson, who confirmed what I suspected. We met for coffee at a diner off West End Avenue in early April 2024. Dave worked in operations, and he'd always been straight with me. He didn't sugarcoat it. Avery and Mark had been together before my layoff. Mark, in fact, had been promoted using frameworks I'd developed. The betrayal wasn't just marital. It was professional, complete, and silent. Dave told me Mark had even attended meetings where my termination was discussed. He never said a word, never defended me. He just waited. I didn't explode. I didn't cry in that diner. I ordered another coffee, paid the bill, and drove back to my brother's place. That night I sat in the dark and made a decision. I wouldn't chase her. I wouldn't confront him. I wouldn't post anything online or send angry texts. I would do what I've always done. I would work. I would rebuild. And I would let the system do what it does to people who don't deliver. He breathed deeply. After that day, his silence became his strategy. He wanted the results to speak louder than any words his pride couldn't say. While I was reorganizing my life, Avery moved in with Mark. They posted photos on social media, smiling at restaurants I couldn't afford anymore, taking weekend trips to Gatlinburg, living the life she said she wanted, the life she claimed I couldn't provide. But what she didn't know was that my expertise in the sector was deeper than they imagined. I'd built relationships over nearly 2 decades. I knew systems, I knew people, and I knew where the gaps were. A former client, Gerald Morton, called me 3 weeks after I lost my job. He ran a mid-sized tech firm specializing in cloud infrastructure and cybersecurity solutions. They were in crisis. A failed migration had left them exposed, and their current team couldn't fix it. Gerald remembered a project I'd led 5 years earlier, a complete overhaul of their authentication systems using Python automation and secure API integrations. He offered me a temporary consulting contract, $2,000 a day, remote work, no benefits. I took it. Within a week, I'd identified the problem. Within 2 weeks, I'd implemented a solution. Within 3 weeks, Gerald called me into his office in downtown Nashville and made me an offer I didn't expect. His company was merging with a larger competitor. He wanted me to lead the integration, not as a consultant, as the new chief technology officer. I accepted Gerald's offer. The merger was complex, involving 2 companies with overlapping services, conflicting systems, and incompatible cultures. It was exactly the kind of challenge I'd been handling for years, the kind of work that required patience, technical depth, and the ability to navigate corporate politics without getting burned. I spent the first 2 weeks just listening, meeting with department heads, reviewing documentation, mapping dependencies. I didn't make promises I couldn't keep. I didn't oversell my capabilities. I just worked. The merger officially closed in late May 2024. The combined company had 180 employees, annual revenue of about $28 million, and a client base that included healthcare providers, financial institutions, and municipal governments across Tennessee and Kentucky. Gerald became Chief Operating Officer. I became Chief Technology Officer. The announcement went out on a Monday morning. I was sitting in my new office, a corner space on the 4th floor with a view of the Cumberland River, when my assistant told me the marketing team was waiting in Conference Room B for the introductory meeting. I walked in with my laptop and a notebook. 10 people sat around the table. I recognized a few faces from LinkedIn profiles I'd reviewed during the transition. I started my introduction. Name, background, vision for the tech strategy. Standard stuff. Then I looked up and saw her. Avery. Sitting 3 seats to my left, frozen, her coffee cup halfway to her mouth. She didn't say anything, but her expression said everything. Her eyes widened for just a fraction of a second. The cup trembled slightly in her hand. Her breathing caught. Then she placed the cup down carefully, as if steadying herself. Shock, confusion, and something else underneath it all. Fear. She'd been hired 2 weeks earlier as a marketing manager. Her resume looked solid on paper. Experience in digital campaigns, brand positioning, content strategy. The hiring had been completed before I officially started. I had no involvement in the decision. Gerald's team had handled it. But now, here she was. And here I was. Her new boss. Not directly, but close enough. I reported to Gerald. She reported to the VP of Marketing, who reported to Gerald. We were in the same ecosystem now. I finished my presentation, talked about integration timelines, security protocols, collaboration tools. I made eye contact with everyone in the room except her, not out of spite, just because I didn't need to. When the meeting ended, people introduced themselves, shook my hand, asked questions. Avery stayed in her seat, pretending to review something on her phone. When the room cleared, she stood up, smoothed her skirt, and walked past me without a word. I let her go. There was nothing to say. Over the next few days, she tried a different approach. She'd smile in the hallway, make small talk near the coffee machine, ask about the weather, about traffic, about weekend plans, surface-level conversations designed to test the temperature. I responded politely, professionally, and briefly. I never mentioned our past. I never brought up the house, the layoff, or the things she'd said. I didn't need to. The fact that I was standing there, in that building, in that role, said everything that needed to be said. Mark, by the way, was still at my old company. He'd been promoted to senior project manager shortly after I left. From what I heard through former colleagues, he was struggling. The projects I'd built had momentum, But without someone who understood the underlying architecture, they started to fracture. Deadlines slipped. Clients complained. Mark tried to compensate by hiring contractors, but that only created more communication problems. By July 2024, he was in meetings every day trying to explain why things weren't moving forward. I didn't follow his situation closely. I didn't need to. I had my own work to focus on. Avery's performance, meanwhile, became a topic of internal discussion, not because I raised it, I didn't, but because her results weren't matching expectations. The VP of Marketing, a sharp woman named Laura Hendricks, had clear KPIs for her team: lead generation, campaign ROI, content engagement, brand visibility. Avery's numbers were flat. Her campaigns weren't converting. Her reports were vague. Laura mentioned it in passing during a leadership meeting in early August 2024. She wasn't asking for my opinion. She was stating a concern. I nodded, took notes, and moved on to the next agenda item. Here's the thing about corporate environments. They run on metrics, on deliverables, on accountability. You can be charming, likable, well-connected, but if you're not producing results, the system catches up with you. It's not personal. It's structural. And Avery, for all her confidence, wasn't delivering. She'd been hired based on a resume that looked good, but resumes don't build campaigns. Work does, and her work wasn't cutting it. Laura scheduled a one-on-one with Avery in mid-August. I wasn't in that meeting, but I heard about it later. Laura laid out the concerns, gave her specific feedback, offered support. Avery promised to improve. She started working longer hours, sending more emails, scheduling more meetings. But activity isn't the same as productivity. 2 weeks later, Laura came to my office and closed the door. She said Avery wasn't improving. She said the marketing budget was tight and they couldn't afford to carry underperformers. She asked if I had any concerns about letting her go. I looked at Laura. She didn't know about my history with Avery. Nobody in that building did, except Avery herself. As far as the company was concerned, I was just the CTO. Avery was just a marketing manager, and Laura was just doing her job. I told her the truth. I said I had no concerns. I said performance decisions were her call, and I trusted her judgment. I didn't advocate for Avery, but I didn't sabotage her either. I just let the process run its course. Avery was let go on a Friday afternoon in early September 2024. Laura handled it with HR present. They gave her 2 weeks severance, a neutral reference letter, and an exit interview. Standard protocol. I wasn't involved in the termination meeting. I didn't need to be. I was in my office working on a security audit when I saw her walk past my door with a small cardboard box. She didn't look at me. She didn't stop. She just kept walking. I sat there for a moment, staring at the screen, and I felt something I didn't expect. Not satisfaction, not vindication, just quiet. A kind of stillness that comes when a chapter closes without drama, without spectacle. I'd rebuilt my career. I'd regained my stability, and the person who told me I'd never recover had just been escorted out of the building where I now made decisions that affected 180 people's livelihoods. I didn't celebrate. I didn't tell anyone. I finished the security audit, sent it to Gerald, and went home to the apartment I'd rented in the Gulch, a neighborhood I actually liked more than the house I'd lost. That night, I ordered Thai food, opened a beer, and watched the sunset from my balcony. The city looked different now, not because it had changed, because I had. Mark's situation, as I mentioned, continued to deteriorate. By September 2024, my former company had lost 2 major clients. The internal postmortem reports, which I heard about through Dave Richardson, pointed to project management failures and lack of technical oversight. Mark was reassigned to a smaller team. Then, in October, he left the company entirely. I don't know if he was pushed or if he jumped. Either way, he was gone. The man who'd taken credit for my work, who'd built a relationship with my wife while I was still married to her, was now unemployed and trying to explain a 6-month tenure that ended in failure. I didn't reach out to him. I didn't gloat. I didn't send a message or make a call. I just kept working. Because that's what I do. That's what I've always done. And in the end, that's what made the difference. By November 2024, I'd been in my role for 6 months. The company was stabilizing. We'd completed the systems integration, migrated all client data to a unified platform, and reduced operational costs by 18%. Gerald was pleased. The board was pleased. More importantly, the clients were pleased. We were signing new contracts, expanding our service offerings, and building a reputation as a reliable partner in a sector where reliability means everything. I was working 60-hour weeks, but it didn't feel like the grind it used to. There was purpose now. Clarity. I knew what I was building and why it mattered. My team respected me, not because I demanded it, but because I'd earned it. I showed up, I delivered, and I didn't ask anyone to do something I wouldn't do myself. That's leadership. Not titles, not corner offices. Just consistency. One afternoon in early December 2024, I got a call from Dave Richardson. He wanted to meet for lunch. We went to the same diner off West End Avenue, where he'd told me about Avery and Mark months earlier. Dave looked tired. He ordered a burger and got straight to the point. He said Mark had been struggling since leaving the company. No solid job offers, mounting credit card debt, and a relationship that was falling apart. Avery apparently had moved out. She'd gone back to her parents' place in Franklin, a suburb south of Nashville. Dave didn't seem happy about any of it. He wasn't gloating. He just thought I should know. I thanked him for the information, finished my sandwich, and went back to the office. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt nothing. Or maybe I felt something closer to indifference. Their problems weren't my problems anymore. Their choices had led them to where they were, just like my choices had led me to where I was. Around that same time, I started dating again. Nothing serious at first. Just coffee meetings, casual dinners, conversations with people who didn't know anything about my past. It felt strange at first, introducing myself without the weight of the last year attached to every sentence. But it also felt freeing. I wasn't Holden, the guy who lost everything. I was just Holden, a man with a job, a life, and a future that wasn't defined by what someone else had taken from me. I met a woman named Claire at a tech conference in downtown Nashville in mid-December 2024. She was a project manager for a healthcare software company, smart, direct, and refreshingly honest about what she wanted. We talked for an hour after a panel discussion about cybersecurity and medical systems. She gave me her card. I called her 3 days later. We had dinner at a steakhouse in Midtown, no pretense, no games, just two professionals who liked each other's company. It didn't turn into anything serious right away, but it reminded me that I was capable of connection, that I wasn't broken. In late December, the company held its annual holiday party at a venue near Centennial Park, open bar, catered food, live music. I wasn't big on office parties, but Gerald insisted I attend. He wanted the leadership team visible and engaged. So I went. I wore a suit, made small talk, and stayed for 2 hours. People thanked me for the work I'd done. They told me the company felt different now, more organized, more confident. I appreciated the feedback, but I didn't linger on it. I wasn't doing this for applause. I was doing it because it was my job. That night, as I was leaving, Laura Hendricks pulled me aside near the coat check. She thanked me for supporting her decision about Avery back in August. She said it had been the right call, even though it was difficult. I nodded. I told her she'd handled it professionally and that I trusted her judgment. She smiled, said happy holidays, and walked back to the party. I drove home, poured a glass of whiskey, and sat on my balcony watching the city lights. It was cold that night, mid-30s, but I didn't mind. The new year came quietly. I spent New Year's Eve 2024 alone, by choice. I ordered pizza, watched a documentary about the Apollo program, and went to bed before midnight. I woke up on January 1st, 2025, feeling steady. Not euphoric, not transformed, just steady. And that was enough. In late January 2025, I got an unexpected email. It was from Avery. The subject line was blank. The message was 3 sentences long. She said she hoped I was doing well. She said she was sorry for how things ended. She said she wished me the best. I read it twice. Then I closed my laptop and didn't respond. There was nothing to say. An apology doesn't undo damage. It doesn't rewrite history. It just acknowledges what already happened. And I didn't need her acknowledgement. I'd already moved forward without it. By February 2025, the company hit a milestone. We'd grown our client base by 22% in less than a year. Gerald announced a round of promotions and bonuses. My bonus was substantial, enough to put a down payment on a house if I wanted to. But I wasn't ready for that yet. I liked my apartment. I liked the flexibility. I liked not being tied to a property that could become a liability if things shifted. I invested most of the bonus instead. Index funds, retirement accounts, things that would grow quietly over time without requiring my attention. I also started mentoring a junior developer on my team, a 25-year-old kid named Jason Park. He reminded me of myself at that age. Hungry, curious, willing to work hard but unsure how to navigate corporate dynamics. I taught him what I'd learned. Document everything. Build relationships. Deliver more than you promise. Don't get emotional when things go wrong. Just fix the problem and move on. Jason listened. He improved. By March 2025, he was leading small projects on his own. I was proud of him, the way a coach is proud of a player who finally understands the game. One morning in April 2025, almost exactly a year after the merger closed, I was having coffee in my office when Gerald stopped by. He closed the door and sat down. He said the board had been discussing succession planning. He said they saw me as a potential CEO candidate in 3 to 5 years. He wanted to know if I'd be interested. I took a sip of coffee. I told him I appreciated the confidence, but I wasn't thinking that far ahead yet. I said I was focused on the present, on building systems that would last. He nodded. He said that was exactly the kind of answer he wanted to hear. Then he left. I sat there for a moment, staring at the river through my window. A year ago, I'd been sleeping on my brother's couch, jobless, humiliated, and hollow. Now I was being considered for a CEO track. Not because I'd been lucky, not because someone had handed me an opportunity, but because I'd worked, because I'd stayed calm when everything collapsed, because I'd refused to let one terrible chapter define the rest of my story. Avery's words echoed in my head for a second. Men like you don't recover. I smiled, not out of bitterness, just out of irony. Because she'd been wrong. Completely, definitively wrong. Men like me don't just recover, we rebuild, we adapt, we outlast. And we do it without making a sound. That afternoon, I got a message from Dave Richardson. He said Mark had moved to Atlanta. New job, new city, fresh start. He said Avery was working for a small marketing firm in Franklin, doing freelance projects. He said they hadn't spoken in months. I thanked Dave for the update. Then I deleted the message. I didn't need to track their lives anymore. They weren't my concern. They weren't my story. My story was here, in this office, in this company, in the work I did every day, and it was just getting started. By summer 2025, I'd stopped thinking about Avery and Mark entirely. They weren't part of my daily reality anymore. They were footnotes, background noise in a story that had moved far beyond them. I was focused on the future, on the company, on my team, on the systems we were building. We landed a major contract with a regional hospital network in June. It was worth $3.2 million over 3 years, the kind of deal that changes a company's trajectory. Gerald called me into his office the day the contract was signed. He shook my hand and said, "None of this happens without you." I appreciated the acknowledgement, but I didn't need it. The work itself was the reward. That same month, I moved into a house in East Nashville. Nothing extravagant. A 3-bedroom craftsman with a small yard, a front porch and a garage where I could finally unpack the boxes I'd been storing at my brother's place. It wasn't the house I'd lost. It was better, because it was mine. No shared mortgage, no shared history. Just a space that belonged to me and reflected where I was now, not where I'd been. I invited my brother Ethan over for dinner the first weekend after I moved in. He brought his wife and their 2 kids. We grilled burgers in the backyard, and the kids ran around chasing fireflies while we talked. Ethan had been my anchor during the worst months. He never asked for rent, never made me feel like a burden. He just gave me space to rebuild. I thanked him that night. He waved it off, said that's what family does. But I knew what it meant, and I wouldn't forget it. In July 2025, Claire and I reconnected. She reached out via email, said she was working on a new project and wanted my opinion on a technical issue. We met for coffee. The conversation started professional and drifted personal. She asked how I was doing. I told her honestly, better than I'd been in years. She smiled and said it showed. We started seeing each other regularly after that. Nothing rushed, nothing forced. Just 2 people who enjoyed each other's company and weren't interested in playing games. By August 2025, the company was preparing for a second round of expansion. Gerald wanted to open a satellite office in Knoxville to serve clients in eastern Tennessee. He asked me to lead the build-out. I spent 3 weeks traveling back and forth, meeting with real estate agents, interviewing candidates, setting up infrastructure. It was exhausting, but it was also proof that I'd become indispensable. Not because I was irreplaceable as a person, but because I'd built systems and relationships that couldn't easily be duplicated. One evening in late September 2025, I was having dinner with Claire at a restaurant in Germantown when I saw someone I recognized across the room. It was Mark. He was sitting alone at the bar, nursing a beer, scrolling through his phone. He looked older, thinner, worn down. I didn't approach him. I didn't acknowledge him. I just kept talking to Claire, laughing at her stories, enjoying my meal. If he saw me, he didn't show it, and I didn't care either way. Claire noticed me glance over and asked if I knew him. I said I used to. She asked if I wanted to leave. I said no. Because I wasn't uncomfortable, I wasn't angry, I was just indifferent. Mark was a person I used to work with, a person who'd made choices that cost him more than they cost me. That was his story. Mine was sitting across the table, sharing a bottle of wine, and talking about a trip we were planning to the Smoky Mountains. In October 2025, I got promoted. Gerald stepped back into a more advisory role, and the board officially named me Chief Executive Officer. I was 43 years old. I'd gone from unemployed and sleeping on a couch to running a company with nearly 200 employees in 18 months. The announcement went out on a Monday. My phone didn't stop ringing for 2 days. Former colleagues, clients, industry contacts, everyone wanted to congratulate me, offer advice, or reconnect. I appreciated the gestures, but I kept my responses brief. I wasn't interested in celebrating. I was interested in working. The first thing I did as CEO was restructure our benefits package. Better health insurance, higher 401k matching, paid parental leave. I'd been on the other side. I knew what it felt like to lose a job and have nothing to fall back on. I wasn't going to let that happen to anyone on my team if I could prevent it. Gerald supported the changes. The board approved them, and by early November 2025, we had the lowest turnover rate in our sector. I also started a mentorship program, not just for junior developers, but for anyone in the company who wanted guidance. I met with people one-on-one, listened to their goals, and helped them build paths forward. Jason Park, the kid I'd been mentoring for over a year, was promoted to senior developer. He thanked me in an email, said I'd changed his career. I told him he'd changed it himself. I just showed him where the doors were. In early November 2025, almost exactly 20 months after Avery walked out with her bags packed, I got a LinkedIn message from her. She said she'd seen the news about my promotion. She said she was happy for me. She said she'd made mistakes and hoped I could forgive her someday. I read the message. I didn't respond. Not out of cruelty, but out of closure. There was nothing left to say. Forgiveness isn't something you give because someone asks for it. It's something you do for yourself when you're ready to let go. And I'd let go a long time ago. This past week I hosted dinner at my house. Ethan and his family came. Claire came. A few close friends from work came. We filled the dining room with food, laughter, and stories. I looked around the table and realized something. I was happy. Not in a loud, performative way, just in a quiet, steady way. The kind of happiness that doesn't need validation because it's built on something real. As we approach the end of the year, the company is on track to close 2025 with record revenue. We've grown by over 20%, expanded into new markets, and built a team that actually enjoys coming to work. Gerald gave a speech at a recent all-hands meeting. He talked about resilience, about leadership, about what it means to build something that lasts. He didn't mention my name specifically, but everyone in that room knew who he was talking about. I stood in the back, holding a cup of coffee, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Pride, not arrogance, just pride. As I reflect on where I've been and where I'm going, I think about the house I lost and the house I gained. I think about the marriage that ended and the relationship that's beginning. I think about the job I was fired from and the company I now lead, and I realize something important. Revenge isn't about making someone else suffer. It's about refusing to stay down when they expect you to. It's about building a life so complete, so whole, that their absence becomes irrelevant. Avery told me men like me don't recover. She was wrong. We don't just recover. We evolve. We rise. And we do it with grace, with dignity, and without needing anyone's permission or approval. The best revenge isn't destroying someone else. It's becoming someone they can no longer touch, someone they can no longer define, someone they can no longer hurt. I didn't destroy Avery or Mark. I didn't need to. They destroyed themselves with their choices, their shortcuts, their belief that success could be borrowed instead of earned. I just kept working, kept building, kept moving forward. And in the end, that was enough. Sometimes silence is the most elegant revenge. Today, I run a company that matters. I mentor people who need guidance. I'm building a relationship with someone who sees me for who I am now, not who I used to be. I live in a house I chose, in a city I love, doing work that challenges me every single day. And when I look back at the man who handed those keys to the bank almost 2 years ago, I don't see a victim. I see someone who refused to quit. Someone who turned humiliation into motivation. Someone who proved that the only person who gets to define your worth is you. If you enjoyed this story, like this video and leave a comment letting me know what you thought. And if you're not subscribed to the channel yet, please subscribe and hit the notification bell to get alerts for new stories like this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.